everyone. Welcome to the Finance Story, and I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. We are a leading digital publication that celebrates and captures life in finance. Our series titled Finance Beyond 2022 aims to inspire young and old CEOs and employees alike. Today, we have a very special guest who's an author. She's been in the industry long enough to give us good knowledge. Today, we have Sangeeta Sumesh. She's a CFO turned business and leadership coach for high performance and financial growth. She has a long resume. She is the founder of ThinkUniQ Solutions. She's the CEO of Gaintastic and is an author of several books such as What the Finance, Where's the Moolah, Get High, Shifting Gears, A Glance at the Unknown, and The Power of High Performance Coaching, which is an audiobook. In the past, she has been a television host at Sun TV. She has worked in companies like PwC, Dun Bradstreet, Alstom, Tupperware, Thales, and several other companies. She's a CA and a cost accountant. She's so many things, in summing up, she's a great leader. She's a coach and she's an advocate. And she's been an advocate for inclusivity. And she is an ardent voice asking women to be part of boards and companies. I think that's a very important question, which we're going to talk about today. Sangeeta, how are you?
I'm doing well, Vishal. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction.
No, that's wonderful to have authors on the show and people who inspire, the industry. We need people like you. Can you tell us a little? I gave you a long introduction, right? But I'd rather hear it from you.
Yes. So when I wanted to start my career, my dad actually wanted me to take up medicine. He wanted me to be a doctor because my granddad was a famous doctor. And I was quite open to the idea, but then, I had a big aversion for physics. And I said, I'm not be able to study physics for some more time. And therefore, by default, I landed up taking commerce. So when I took up commerce, I knew I needed to do something professional and therefore wanted to do CA. Of course, my other option was to do an MBA, but then I chose CA over MBA because MBA, I wanted to do it in reputed institutions, which meant I would have to be away from home and, I'm the only child. So I said, I might as well be at home with my parents. And so that's how I started started my finance career. Of course, when I started it, I never thought I would land up as a CFO. In fact, I remember, after I got married, I was telling my husband that, when I get my first child, I would probably be taking a career break. And then, maybe once the kids grow up, that's when I would maybe get back to working and stuff like that. But you know what? I think once you start to taste success, it just keeps growing on you. So, one thing led to the other, and then I realized there's so much more to it. I mean, of course, financial independence is one which is required for women, but more than that, a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that you have contributed something, something that makes your life worthwhile. So those were things that were beginning to get on to me, and I really enjoyed that, so I was like, can I manage without taking a career break? And luckily for me, things worked out very well. So I was able to have a continuous career, and I guess that's what helped me to be where I am. And of course, the CFO, it just happened because I guess once you start performing well, people start taking note of, whatever are your contributions. So therefore, when you deliver results, you get promoted automatically, and that's what happens. So I guess once you stretch your limits, you never know. I always say, you never know what you're capable of until you go ahead and achieve it.
You motivate a lot of people. How did you get these aspects as qualities within you? Were you always confident as a young child, and this became a larger thing in your life later on? I want you to stitch together this because most of the women or men I speak to are single-minded. But like you said, you've done multiple things: speaking, coaching, writing books, managing family. How did that come about?
I think the school played a very important role. So during my school days, there were a lot of these oratorical competitions, and I was really kicked about participating and, of course, winning them as well. So I had done a lot of those talks during my growing up years at school. So I think that kind of set the base, the foundation. And then, of course, the Sun TV happened. So that was, again, something very interesting and exciting for me. And then, I was in South Africa for about 8 years. And, in the Indian community there, we used to have a lot of these programs. So I used to, by default, people used to recognize me from Sun TV. And so by default, I was like the host anchoring a lot of these shows there. And therefore, I think it kind of built and grew on me. And to answer your question, I'm also a professional speaker now, so I address corporates on my niche areas, which is finance, high performance, leadership development, and diversity. So it has all, like, if I, like Steve Jobs says, if I'm able to connect the dots, it seems to have fallen really well into place. And I didn't know professional speaking was a business by itself. And that was quite an eye opener for me. So I'm also a member of this forum. It's called Professional Speakers Association of India. So that has helped me in the sense to, fine tune and polish my speaking skills. So, especially these virtual sessions, that has quite helped me in delivering the virtual sessions better. So I guess that's the journey on the professional speaking.
Very well said. My next question was going to you being a coach. Most of us I come from the startup world, and in that community, we all hear about people in Silicon Valley. And here we are, and you being, how did you become a coach? What nudged you to become a coach? And how did that become full time? You obviously must have been paid a lot to be a CFO. And how did this happen? And it's like starting all over again. But I think it's a great profession and being a coach, right? Can you tell me about that, please?
So firstly, I think I'm a coach by accident, because I'll tell you why. I didn't know what coaching was. I didn't know what a coach does. Like most people, I used to think a coach is a domain expert, right? And then coach can just tell you, do this, do that. Basically, like, I didn't know the difference between a coach and a mentor. And I guess that's the case with most people. But then, like, I think about 5-6 years ago, I was always having this pressing thought. I was like, if I'm able to contribute to the success of one organization, how can I scale myself up? How can I go and impact more organizations, more businesses, and more leaders? So this was a thought that was always luring in my head. And then by coincidence, at one point in time, I kept hearing from, various different sources, something or the other about coaching. Either I was meeting a coach or somebody would talk about coaching and so on. And it just kind of intrigued me. I was like, what is this coaching all about? So when I did check about it, I was told, you have to undergo training, and then, that normally happens in Bombay or Delhi or Bangalore. And I was like, I don't want to travel again, just for this, so forget it. And then at the launch of my first book, which is A Glance at the Unknown, I met somebody, and again, I was like, what do you do? He's like, I'm a coach. So I'm like, just hang on, it's just too much that I've been hearing about coaching and coaches. So I said, tell me more. And then he went on to explain, and guess what? He said the coach training was happening in Chennai, and that was like right next to my house. So I was like, okay, I was just I was just intrigued by this concept. So I just went, I inquired, and it seemed interesting. And to be honest, even at that time, I never thought I would pursue it full time. But I just found it so interesting. I was like totally fascinated with it, and it kind of grew on me. And then I was like, should I take this up full time? Now, this was a big question mark that was there in my head, and I wasn't too sure. I wasn't too sure because whether that would interest my, sustain my interest over the long time. So, I just wanted to be sure before I could take the plunge. So what I did for about 4 years, I continued both. I was a full-time CFO and I started coaching people parallelly. So of course, it was more like over the weekends, sometime after hours and stuff like that. Just to be sure, I didn't want to take a blind jump just for the sake of doing it. So I just wanted to be sure about myself, my interests, and also to see whether people would accept me as a coach. So this was what was, going on in my mind. And of course, I decided that, in coaching, there are like different aspects, So I was like, I wanted to position myself as a business coach because I said, coming from the finance background, that's going to help. And being at a leadership level, that's where you can really make the impact. A leader can really impact the organization. So I say a leader drives high performance for the best financial success, right? So I was like, okay, it'll be good if I can, stitch all these things together and offer what I can offer. And most importantly, I felt there should be a purpose, right? And the purpose was something that was very core to me, to my values, because, being is one thing, but then how are you contributing? What sort of difference can you make? Now, these were questions that was like always there in the back of my head. And I guess, coaching was able to serve my inner need, my passion, my interest. And I just felt a lot more fulfilled and satisfied doing it. So I was like, that's fine. I mean, now I need to put all my learnings to good use.
How was that experience like, and how did you scale that up? I'm really curious. What type of professionals did you train? CEOs, CFOs? Was it startup leaders? Was it actual business leaders who wanted a fresh perspective? How was that experience? You can talk about your first gig and talk about how you scaled the coaching part.
Right. So, like, I guess because of law of attraction, it just so happens that a lot of finance professionals tend to come to me. But of course, apart from finance professionals, I have also coached different other leaders, some CEO, managing directors, CEO, and stuff like that. Mostly, I do focus on corporate leaders because I guess the connect is better coming from a corporate background. But having said that, I also work with few entrepreneurs, more people that I know personally, and who have the drive and who want to really go ahead and succeed. So that's what I do. So regarding my initial coaching, yes, I think so. I was also little, what do I say, a little skeptical on how it is. So I did have a bit of inner fear. Uh, that's what I felt initially. But I guess, once you start going ahead and moving forward, it just flows automatically. So all that is required is you just have to be yourself. So, and then, ask the right questions at the right time. And I think that's what makes the difference.
Now, let me bring in the CFO role, right? CFOs in the old days were just considered to be part of audit, tax, some management of some, I mean, talking to banks about raising loans and money and such. But today, the role has evolved very rapidly in so many different things with digital transformation. It's almost like the CEO function is a strategic function now. So, what are some of the key factors that CFOs need to keep in mind if they have to succeed in this ever changing world?
So I think the main thing is the CFOs are now have to be business partners. They need to go beyond the traditional role, and then they need to build the strategy. See how they can really partner onto the business, see how the business can grow further, keeping finance as the base. So I think that is very important. And like you exactly said, the ability to understand tech, because like these days, everything is so tech driven. So the ability to learn, keep learning, whatever is new, whatever is latest, because that's when you'll be able to contribute a lot more to the business. So keeping yourself updated, not just in your finance domain, but areas that are related to your business. And see how much more you can contribute, because many times I've noticed a lot of CFOs think, oh, my role is just finance, this is the only thing that I'm going to be looking at. But you need to go much beyond. That's when you sharpen your leadership skills as well, and then take up additional responsibilities so that you can contribute the most to the business. So I think that is very, very essential. And another thing that I've realized is to be successful as CFOs, you must be having the ability to get things done and manage your people as well, right? Because many people, if you've heard, they say, oh, finance people, they're so boring, very, very they don't like to speak much, they don't like to express themselves and stuff like that. But I think if we start exhibiting a little more of the human aspect, I think that can go ahead and make a lot of difference in the long run.
I agree with you. One only has to see Mr. Mohandas Pai of formerly of Infosys, and the way he speaks. He also was in HR. That's exactly what my next question was, right? CFOs are not boring, according to me. They're quiet and unassuming people, but they can also be talkative and articulate like Mr. Pai and like you, I want to know, can they do different functions? Can they do HR as a function, marketing as a function? Because they bring perspective, right? Because they understand the basis of the economy, company is money. So for them, everything is strategic. So do you think they can go into doing several other roles also from finance?
Definitely, yes. One is definitely helps you to learn a lot more. So definitely, if there is a passion and if they don't feel restricted, and in the sense like I will remain only in the finance domain, I think it's a great place to go ahead and explore other things. Now, for instance, I was in Thales, right, which is a French multinational. There, people used to shift verticals. Like a finance professional would move to a HR domain or even into operations, whatever, and vice versa. Like, I mean, even here, one of the CFO forums, I met somebody who was the CHRO, and then he was so good at numbers that he became the CFO. He became the CFO and the CHRO. We've seen otherwise, right? CFO can take up the role of a CHRO, but here the CHRO was made the CFO. So definitely there's nothing stopping you. Provided you're interested, you feel you have the capability, I mean, just go ahead and contribute, because that's when, your learnings, your scope also broadens, right? So I think that's important.
The next question is a very important question for many of us. In fact, I've written about it several times in the previous decade, right? And I don't know the numbers to speak of it. There was this number in 2015 that only 1% of the corporate management or C-suite leaders are women, and obviously very few of them on boards. Less than apparently 1% in the top Fortune 500 companies would be women on the boards of these companies. I hope that's changed now. And you've been an advocate of this thing for a very long time. What are the numbers?
So Vishal, tell me, have you heard of the concept, the term male leaders or men on corporate boards?
No, I want. It's been
Yeah,
gender neutral. In corporates, it has to be gender neutral. Yes.
exactly. And, you know, to me, I have been brought up in a world without this gender bias. It was more that, whether you are capable of doing this or not. So for me personally, gender has never been a differentiating factor. And yet, like you rightly said, it's probably to do the fact that many women do fall apart in the mid of their career, because it could be family responsibility or whatever be the reasons, but yet they have so much potential in them. And it's unfortunate that if this is being discounted because of gender. So, and
Absolutely.
not
I couldn't
yes,
agree with you more. Absolutely. Go on.
yes. So, and it's many women, they fail to recognize this potential that they have in them. They tend to feel shy. In fact, there was this I don't know if it was a survey or something, which I thought it was very true. If there is a particular job opening, right, if given the job description, the male thinks, even if he has like just about 50% of it, he's like, I am the right person for it. And the same thing with a woman, she may even have up to 90% of those requirements, and then she's only looking at the 10% saying, oh, I may not be the right fit for this. So that's pretty unfortunate. But I think it's time we overcome this, right? Even women by themselves, I mean, forget others, women by themselves, they have to work on themselves to, live up to their potential. So that's exactly the reason why I co-founded ThinkUniQ Solutions along with the former CHROs of Walmart, AIG, and GE. So we really want to go and see how women can really grow in their space, right? Grow either in their corporate world or in their entrepreneurship journey, because there's so much of untapped potential, right? And women have these dreams. They have the potential, they have the capabilities, and yet there's something stopping them. So I always say, you need to learn to partner with your family, partner with your colleagues at work, because they are your extended arms, and they are always there to support you, in your challenges, to help you grow, whatever that be. Sometimes women don't like to express this out. They think the entire world rests only on their shoulders. So, but if they can go a little beyond that and then go ahead and seek help wherever required, I think that will give them that extra leeway to grow further, right? So I think little measures, both women doing this, right, in the sense working on themselves and doing what is required, and at the same time, I think now, since this being a topic that's being a lot spoken about, I think men are also being a lot more receptive to this. And I must admit that the younger generation, I think their perspectives is a lot different. It's not like the traditional way of thinking. So I guess, that's somewhere slowly starting to change. Even at senior management levels, there aren't that many women. And, it just dwindles as it goes onto the top. But like I said, I'm hoping this change would get a lot better. And, if you were to even compare with the previous generation and the current generation, I think this ratio is changing. But yes, it needs to change a lot more.
And you meet so many women and men in terms of coaching them, right? Just an anecdote and slight digression. When you coach both the genders, right? What's the fundamental difference in a sense?
Right. So it's a very interesting question that you asked, Vishal. So what I have noticed with men, a lot of them have difficulties in communication. Their communication skills definitely needs a lot more fine tuning and sharpening, I would say, because they're probably not expressing themselves correctly. That's what I've noticed with the men. And with women, I feel they just get overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed, even at the slightest of things. It's like, it is something that they can easily work through, but yet they think it's like such a humongous task. So, and then during the coaching conversation, when I actually break it down for them, they're like, oh, yes, yeah, it's quite simple. I can manage to do this. So that definitely makes a difference. And for men as well, when I say communication, they are good at communication, not that they are not good, but they lack expression, right?
Yeah, very cold face.
Yeah, cold face is one. And another thing is like, as a leader, sometimes, they just say, get this done to the junior.
Oh yeah.
When I say junior, the one done.
I get what you're saying.
Yes.
It's almost like a command, not collaborative.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if they can, give a little more context to it and then build on that, I think that makes a lot of difference. And that's when they're enabling the best to come out from their team members as well.
We've all been in multiple teams. For me, a leader is somebody who doesn't lose his cool, who's been able to measure everybody in a balanced way and run everything without being very controversial or taking sides. Right? What are your thoughts on leadership, and what are some of the qualities that a leader must possess?
Right. So I say, I'm in fact a strong advocate. I say a leader has to be an adaptive leadership, because there's no like one size that fits all. Now, as a leader, your role is to bring out the best from your team, right? And each one has a different way. Like let me give you this example from my own team. So in my previous role as a CFO, there was one person very good at his work. So all with him, all I had to do is like, if I tell him I need whatever the reports, whatever by this particular date, this particular time, I know it would get done. I don't have to go behind him to follow up. Whereas another team person, right, I can't use the same style. He would need constant reminders, and I'll have to keep kind of checking on him on the progress, because otherwise I know I will not be able to meet my deadline. So therefore, there's no one size that fits all. So you can't expect your team members to adapt to your style, right? That's the old school of thought. But if you as a leader want to be successful, and if you want the best from your team members to come on, because a leader, I say, is only as successful as the team members. So as a leader, it's your duty to get the best from your team. And if you have to get the best from your team, you need to understand your team members, understand them, and then you adapt your style to their the way of functioning, because that's when you enable the best from them. And it means they are contributing to your success. So adapt yourself to each situation, to each team member, and to each requirement is what I would say.
A lot of people work from home. Leadership is a very crucial role to retain talent. And that was my next question, right? Today, a lot of professionals, I've been reading about something called the Great Resignation in the US, where people want to be working at home, pardon me, and they don't want to come to organizations. The professionals are also going towards startups, saying it's more flexible, that there's a lot more money to be made in a long term, but it's collaborative in the short run, right? But what is this world heading to in the next decade? How do you see startups becoming important, professionals becoming entrepreneurs, and also how should large organizations be cognizant of these things and retain such people?
Right. So, firstly, I must acknowledge I love this question because what you're saying is so true. But one thing that many people have to realize, especially if they are considering the startup, is startups are not always hunky dory as it seems, right? In fact, we keep hearing only about the successful startups, and therefore, we're just enamored by this concept of startup, but we probably not aware of the umpteen number of startups that have failed. So it's essential to understand that, I think there was a percentage, if I remember right, it's maybe I think 2%, I'm not sure, but a very
Yeah,
low
you're
percentage.
about right.
Yeah. So it's those very few startups that actually succeed. So if you were to just look at those startups and then you think, I am geared to do a startup, well, then you just need to take a pause and then see if it's the right thing. But even despite that, if one wants to go ahead with the startup, there's nothing wrong in trying, definitely, because you never know. So go ahead and try. But I would also like to caution, it's a lot different compared to the corporate world, because in the corporate world things come to you like in a ready-made platter, right? But in the startup you have to roll up your sleeves and you have to do things from the scratch. So unless you have the shift in your mindset, it's not going to be easy. And that apart, I think startups, they need to be really scalable. So, you need to have a great idea. You must be able to solve a particular problem and scale it up, because that's when you're going to see the growth, right? So if you can look at all these aspects and then take a call, I think then is what it makes a difference. But, right now, with the work from home and other things, there's so much of flexibility. So there's no real need, I would think, I may be wrong though, that it just only has to be a startup, because earlier startups used to give all these flexibility and not a corporate. But now things have changed, right? So I think that's what makes the difference.
And you're saying that the role of finance is going to be very powerful going forward, or because of the amount of knowledge that they need to possess, with the fact that they already know the knowledge of money. And now they need to know the knowledge of these functions as well. So do you see that as an all-encompassing thing that's going to happen? Or would you see CFO as a role itself remaining in tax and audit as a subject?
Right. So that's a lovely question again. Let me take a pause and tell you, or rather ask you to go back to your childhood days. When we were growing up, especially during school days, it was normally the student would be very good in sports, or very good in, let's say, a dance or dramatics, or very good in academics. Their focus would be, if it's into sports, they would only be in sports. If they are good in dance, it will be only dance. And if it's academics, it's only academics. But now what you see among the school kids, they would be excelling in academics. They would also be doing well in sports and also have some talent, let's say, in dance. So we are evolving to such a space where, the diverse talents is required. And therefore, for a CFO, doesn't have to restrict themselves only to finance. And like you rightly said a while ago, it's all digital now, and therefore technology becomes a great part of it, right? So I feel going forward, for all you know, these demarcations can also vanish, right? Because there could be, I mean, what if there is like a job rotation, right? The CFO has to become a CMO in 2 years, CMO has to become a CHRO after 2 years, maybe, you never know. So that is also possible. So it's never really required to restrict yourself to just one role or one capability. And that applies for a startup as well. So for a startup, like I told you a while ago, those things you need to really keep in mind before you head to a startup. But hey, if you're up for some adventure and you're really up to trying new things, I'm sure there's nothing stopping you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sangeeta Sumesh. Thank you so much for being on the Finance Story.